So I'm going to change the subject just a little bit, and I'm going to focus on nuclear power. At an earlier session in this room today, I got asked a very hard question whether basically I was a lobbyist for the fossil fuel industry, how much money did the nonprofit I'm associated with, the Institute for Energy Research, get from fossil fuel companies. And the media person was from The Guardian. And the way I responded to her is that I'm not pro-fossil fuels or pro any particular energy or related technology. I'm neutral. Consumers decide what the best energies are, and it's good public policy to have the government be neutral, keep taxpayers, keep politicians out of it, and they make the decisions, and I support consumers, I support free market entrepreneurs, I support taxpayers, and I support energy freedom. Energy freedom defined as voluntary transactions between consenting adults, which I think gives us the moral high ground over government intervention where there's the imposition of force. So that was my answer, and I approach nuclear fission and nuclear fusion from a free market perspective. And I wrote a white paper, Nuclear Power, a Free Market Approach, where it's about 40 pages, where I go through the history of the politics and the technology of nuclear power. And basically my conclusion is that in terms of political economy, the nuclear power industry has a lot more in common with on-grid wind and solar than it does with oil, gas, and coal. That if it wasn't for government intervention, and particularly a whole lot of government intervention in all sorts of different areas, that the nuclear industry would have never been commercialized in the United States. There would be nuclear power in military applications, but as an industry, it wouldn't have happened. It probably would have happened in a free market situation in the US, that the UK and Russia would have developed this industry, but it wouldn't have happened in the United States. So that's a rather shocking statement, but I invite you to look at the historical record, which I'll do here in the next 10, 15 minutes. So commercial nuclear fission dates from the 1950s, a time when electricity was generated by fossil fuels and hydro. And fossil fuels is basically coal. It was almost all coal and hydro making up the difference. Today, nuclear supplies 19% of US electrical generation, and globally it's 10%. Nuclear fusion, you don't hear much about this. It is it's quite a boondoggle to date. Governments have spent tens of billions of dollars over a couple of decades. It's very much in the laboratory. There's no private or nonprofit interest in this. It's a government dream. And I would say that nuclear fission, which is a technological success, and it is safe, what it is, it's a backstop technology. And when the nuclear industry got going in the 50s, there was the hope or the concern that oil, gas, and coal would eventually run out. General Electric even predicted that fossil fuels would not be used for electric generation by 1990. Just all sorts of pie in the sky. The scientists were saying, you know, we're almost there, unlimited potential. The vendors, GE, Westinghouse, there was a lot of hope that by economies of scale and learning by doing, that they could get the cost down and the rest of it. But the first nuclear plant that came on was in 1957, and it was a 60 megawatt unit. It came in at 50% above estimated cost, well above the same capacity for using coal. And the utilities were looking at this and going, nope, it doesn't work. At the same time, there was studies coming out, the Brookhaven study that said the worst case scenario of a nuclear accident, deaths, injuries, and in today's dollars, more than $100 billion worth of damage. So there was really no interest in the private sector to do this. So, but there was a real push from Eisenhower, from the federal officials at Atoms for Peace. We had done these horrible things with nuclear in wartime. Now we need to look at nuclear as the future of energy. So the number of subsidies got the industry going in the late 50s, early 60s. The Price-Anderson Act, putting a liability cap of about 1/14 of what the estimated worst case damage could be. That was very big. The government was also offering all the research and development, which in the late 40s, early 50s, in today's dollars was more than $100 billion. Also free enriched uranium for the first 7 years. So the federal officials are working with the industry. They're all in the room going, okay, how do we make this work? What subsidies do you need? And all the rest of it. But the big thing that also allowed this experimental technology to go commercial was that from federal pressure, the state utility commissions agreed that they would support nuclear. And the utilities are going, okay, if I can add this to my rate base, because all my assets right now are valued at original depreciating cost upon which I can multiply my rate of return, this would be a wonderful thing to get beyond the vanishing rate base and to expand my rate base. All this was happening, and GE and Westinghouse, the two biggest providers, and I think there was one or two other companies, they did something else that caused the nuclear boom, and that is they offered turnkey projects. They said they would guarantee that we will complete this project at this cost, at such a date, and then we'll take the risk afterwards. And the vendors were thinking, learning by doing, economies of scale, we can do it. The scientists in Science magazine were saying, we can, the technology's there. It's a technological future. We're America, we can do it. Well, this program from GE and Westinghouse, it lasted less than 3 years because the projects were coming in at 50% above the agreed upon price. So the shareholders of GE and Westinghouse were taking a bath. The company's gotten a lot of trouble. They ended the program. It was cost plus from there on. And boy, did the electric utilities like that. Higher the cost, the more the overrun, we can get a regulated rate of return, make more money off this. So the other thing, the federal regulators were saying they took a decentralized approach. Everyone come up with your own design technology. So the utilities were doing all these things, and they weren't talking to each other. And this was a recipe for disaster because you really needed to standardize things. You needed to share best practices. None of this happened, and maybe antitrust law was part of the problem. In France, they had a nuclear program that was more expensive than fossil fuel generation, but in France they used one design and they did it relatively well compared to the rest of the, or at least in the United States. So the Price-Anderson Act, it's been extended 7 times. It's a very old law now, and if nuclear is safe, that begs the question of, why can't the utilities, the reactor owners get their own insurance? And we'll get to that in a minute. So the orders for new reactors ended in 1979. You have a lot of federal over-regulation, micro-regulation coming down. But here's the fact. That is, of all the different ways to boil water, to produce steam, to run the turbines, splitting atoms is the most complicated, fraught, expensive alternative. That's just the way it was in the 1950s and 60s with relatively light regulation. Has certainly been the case today. And here is the proof of the pudding. No company outside of the centrally planned economies, China, other places, where, they'll just build nuclear, doesn't matter really what it costs. But in a relatively free market, there's not one nuclear construction company that will offer a turnkey project that will guarantee the cost, guarantee the date that the project will be delivered. And all these, you hear a lot of contracts being signed for data centers with potential nuclear plants, the small modular reactors. Look at the fine print. They won't let you know what's in the fine print. But there's all sorts of outs in there, and none of them are turnkey. So new capacity is very expensive. We don't know how expensive it is. Now, existing capacity is a whole nother story. And wind and solar have ruined the economics of existing nuclear plants for marginal cost pricing because wind and solar has virtually no marginal cost, even though the marginal cost of uranium and operations for nuclear plants is very low too. So this is a real problem that I certainly didn't anticipate, how marginal cost pricing can ruin the economics of nuclear, not only existing gas and coal plants. Now, with 3 Mile Island, the industry, this one accident put the whole nuclear power industry in the United States in jeopardy. And by golly, they being the utility heads, they finally came to their senses and said, okay, we have all got to cooperate. And they formed a group called the Institute for Nuclear Operations. And for the first time, the owners of the different nuclear reactors lent employees to go work with each other. They started benchmarking off each other, and they were doing the things that should have been done and would have been done in a free market at the very beginning. And you haven't heard of any nuclear accidents of note, and it could be that nuclear plants are the safest form of electrical generation. But a free market reform that I'm trying to popularize, and I'm just the researcher, I need the advocacy groups, the C4 to do it, is to make a case before Chris Wright and everyone else that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission should transfer all its regulatory responsibilities to the Institute for Nuclear Operations. In the same way, the Price-Anderson Act should be repealed. The $8 billion or so that have been collected in premiums in case of an accident, these can be distributed back to the owners of the nuclear reactors, and they can get their own insurance, or they can put the capital of their whole utility up, and stockholders will have to decide whether that's too much of a risk. So we're deregulating and we're privatizing regulation. And I think there's a real opportunity here for a free market ending. So hope springs eternal. We've had a nuclear renaissance one with George W. Bush. That did not end very well. Nuclear renaissance 2 under Biden, that did not end well. You probably heard about Plant Vogtle in Georgia. It came in at $38 billion versus the original cost of $17 billion. Came in years late. Westinghouse went bankrupt. These are still experimental technologies, and small modular reactors, we don't have much history on them. You know, who really wants to take that risk? The other thing about nuclear is it takes a long time to build these plants. The number of parts in a nuclear plant might be 10 times more than in a natural gas or coal plant. And if there's some problems in a nuclear plant, there's a lot of situations where it just takes a long time and they have to be very careful to fix it, whereas the same problem in a natural gas or coal plant, they can do much quicker. Again, splitting atoms is the most complicated, fraught way to boil water to run the turbines. So we have a third nuclear renaissance with the current president. Oh gosh, reviewing all the federal subsidies, research and development, Price-Anderson Act. The Export-Import Bank has been subsidizing, under political pressure from the domestic vendors, the GEs and the Westinghouse. They're getting loans, low-interest loans to build these plants in other countries. That needs to end. The Production Credit Act, the Production Tax Credit, what wind and solar gets, guess what? Nuclear gets that too. The PTC and the investment tax credit, all this was in Biden's so-called Inflation Reduction Act. And there's a $6 billion nuclear credit that was in there. There's state subsidies. And Trump is going very big on this. And it's one thing to, quote, deregulate the industry, streamline regulation, something very different to give special government subsidies to nuclear. But nuclear needs all of it, because that's just where the technology is. Trump nuclear policy, 5–10 years from now, I think we're going to see a lot of cost overruns, a lot of taxpayer waste here. It's kind of a shame. And what's also really killed nuclear is that when the nuclear industry got going, gas turbine technology coming out of the jets from World War II, natural gas combined cycle is just a wonderful technology, and the energy efficiency, converting natural gas into electricity on a BTU basis, it's gone up from maybe 45% in the 1980s to 63–64% today. Radical improvements, and certainly natural gas horizontal drilling and fractionation. The major technological advances in the energy industry are happening within the fossil fuel family, much more than outside, even though you always hear that wind and solar have made all these gains. And certainly natural gas and all fossil fuels are environmental projects like before. So a free market approach, and I have 50, I'm over by 1 minute. Deregulate and privatize, and I'll just leave it at that. Sorry to burst your bubble with the clean alternative of nuclear, but that's where the technology stands. I think we need to be realistic. Thanks.